Today we're going to be talking about the steps involved in planning an investigation.
Now, it doesn't matter what the investigation is. All investigations need to follow certain steps in the planning stage.
To show you how this works, we're going to be carrying out an investigation to find out whether the length of a pendulum determines its period.
So in other words, the length of time it takes for a pendulum to complete one whole swing from one side to the other and then back. Now, in order to do this, I've got us some equipment.
No, Simon, I don't think we need any of this. I was thinking of something a lot bigger.
Oh, cool, trapeze. I see what you're going for.
So the first thing to do before beginning practical work is to develop a hypothesis.
A hypothesis is an idea or an explanation that we think might be right. In this case, I'm going to hypothesize that the length of time it takes for a pendulum to complete one whole swing from one side to the other and back depends on the length of the pendulum, and in particular, that the longer the pendulum, the greater the time it will take.
And what are you basing that on?
Well, can I borrow your necklace a sec?
Yeah.
So notice how if I hold the necklace up here, it takes longer to complete a whole swing than if I hold it close down the bottom like this.
Yeah, it does.
So I'm guessing that the trapeze is our pendulum, but what are we swinging?
Well, that's something I wanted to ask you. How do you feel about heights? What happened to you?
The next step is to plan the investigation, which means we need to work out how we can test if our hypothesis is correct or not.
And to do that, we need to identify all of the variables, so the things that we can control, alter, and measure. Now, in science, we talk about the controlled, dependent, and independent variables. Now, in our experiment, the independent variable is the length of the trapeze, because that's what changes. The control variable is your mass hanging off the trapeze. So how much do you weigh?
About 85 kilos.
Okay, so that's unlikely to change throughout the experiment. You also need to make sure that when you start the pendulum swing, you start it from the same point every time. That's another control variable.
Definitely.
And then finally, the dependent variable is what we measure in this investigation. Now, the dependent variable is dependent on the independent variable. So in this case, it's the time it takes for the trapeze to complete one complete swing. So that's all the variables. The next thing we need to do is predict what's going to happen.
Well, I predict I'm going to freeze and then fall off the trapeze.
Well, hopefully not. But, for example, how long do you think it's going to take for the trapeze to complete one full swing when the trapeze is at its longest?
Well, it's definitely going to be longer than when the length was shorter. It's like with Shinny's necklace.
Okay, well, let's see what happens. The final stage in planning an investigation is to select the appropriate range of values to record your measurements. We're using the longest length, which is 7.7 meters, and the shorter possible length of 6.5 meters. Now, if we were to do this in a lab setting, we'd probably want to do a pre-test to determine the long and short range that's most practical, taking great care with safety when it comes to choosing the longer pendulum length.
Keep going, Shinny. There's no rush.
I think we might have to skip out that step, though. All right, Simon, off you go.
Here we go.
Try not to jiggle around too much, because that's going to skew your reading.
You try being up here. What's the time, Shinny?
4.10 seconds.
Do you want to try? It's really fun.
So now we've increased the length of the trapeze. So we've lowered it, so it now measures 7.7 meters in length. Are you ready to go, Simon? Right, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. Looking at about 5-something seconds. So the time taken for the shorter trapeze to complete one full swing is 4.49 seconds. And the time taken for the longer trapeze to complete one full swing is 5.08 seconds.
So, my hypothesis was correct.
Yeah, spot on. How are you feeling?
Pretty great, actually. It was really fun.
Well, in that case, can we repeat the readings? It is best practice, after all.
But why? The data looked great.
Yeah, but repeatable readings confirms how precise they are.
So, to recap, the 5 key points when planning an investigation. Develop a hypothesis, an explanation that you think will apply to the situation you're looking at. Identify your variables, what you're going to change, what you think might vary as a result, and what you're going to keep constant. Make and justify your predictions, what you think is going to happen. Select an appropriate range of values. And then lastly, decide if you need to repeat any readings.
Are you going to practice your quadruple backflips now?
Well, I thought you could do that. Do you want to try on the bodysuit? Oh,
No.
Come on, there's one here in your